5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA. And of course, we are now live on the Michigan Basketball Insider on all our channels YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, because it is a matchup that we have just got to talk about with our guy, our big fella. He's been in this rivalry. He was the best player in the state when he came out and went to the University of Michigan, best player out of Clarkston, Michigan. Went on to start at the University of Michigan, became a first round draft pick where he played 10 seasons, and now one of the best basketball commentators in the land. And he is my man, Timmy Mack, our guy, Tim McCormick. Tim, good morning. How are you on this exciting game day?
Something just feels a little bit different today. I woke up and there's a different taste in my mouth. There's a different anticipation. I can't wait for this game. And it reminds me a lot of the way I felt before the Nebraska game. On game day, when you've got a rival, there's just something about the day that's different. And I think that both Michigan and Michigan State players are going to be so up for this. It's going to be so fast and so physical, a game in which you celebrate a basket, and it's going to be really hard for both teams to score.
I want to reflect before we dive into Michigan State. You mentioned being excited about the Nebraska game. I was too. They were shorthanded, more shorthanded than we expected, because I think we all suspected that Braden Frager wouldn't play, but Rink Mast not playing was basically a game day decision, and so they were shorthanded. And boy, Tim, you wouldn't know it the way they came out of the gates. Dusty said, "Man, they may have been harder to guard with that lineup they had in the first half." I wonder what you think of that half, that game, Michigan versus Nebraska.
I walked away with a healthy dose of respect for Nebraska. I think based on their schedule that they will ultimately be the Big Ten champion this year. And I had a really, I think, unique perspective on the game because I broadcast the game for Sirius XM radio, and I don't typically do radio, but it was really fun to watch the game and dissect what was going to happen throughout the entire day. I attended shoot around for Michigan. I attended shoot around for Nebraska. I talked to players for both sides. I talked to coaches for both sides. It was funny talking to Fred Hoiberg. I said, I noticed that Rink Mast is not here. And he said, yeah, he's back at the hotel. He's sick. And I said, what happens if he doesn't play? And he said, well, I'm going to talk to Dusty and recommend a running clock because that's not going to go very well for us. He said that Michigan looked like an NBA team with their length, their athleticism. He was playing a little bit, obviously, because he had still great confidence that they could win that game. And when Rink Mast came up before the game, he was trying to see if he had enough energy to go. He came up and I shook his hand and I said, how you feeling? He said, I've got the flu. And I said, why are you shaking my hand then? I don't want to get the flu. But at that minute, I said, okay, Michigan is going to win this game by 15 points because of the fact that they were just so small. And the way that they played in the first half, they scored 50 points against Michigan. And I was extremely disappointed and frustrated at times that even though Nebraska plays this collapsing defense, they close the paint up. They're so compact and congested that I don't know why Michigan stayed on the perimeter. When you look at Yax and Namari, they were 0 for 11 from 3, Sam. If you're 0 for 11, you've got to stop shooting. You know, you've got to get some layups, get in transition, make a couple of defense plays, do something positive, because you can't just keep jacking up shots. I know they're good shooters. I know they're capable, but especially when you've got little guys inside against your big guys, you've got to find a way to force feed the ball into the paint. Michigan didn't do it. I think they were a +6 in points in the paint, which needed to be a big advantage. But I was also thrilled and really impressed that when they were down 11, they just kept fighting and scratching and clawing. I thought that showed me an awful lot.
Yeah, I came away extremely impressed with Nebraska. When they're full strength. I mean, you saw them already go to Illinois and take them down in a big time matchup, which is going to be a rematch here coming up. But in just a little bit of airspace is all they needed to bury threes in that first half. And I came away as disappointed as it was to see the backcourt struggle offensively in the first half. It was more disconcerting to me that defensively they were getting lost on switches. They were getting hung up on screens. It just was. Damari talked about the communication. Dusty talked about the intensity of basically, hey, you got to be fighting through screens. You got to be sprinting like their guards do, running that marathon in the half court. Just after the game, he just talked about not seeing that. Can't remember the exact phrase, Tim, but that he talked about the intensity of effort or something like that on the defensive end of the floor. And Nebraska took advantage of that. I was heartened by seeing them play a much better on that end of the floor coming out of the break.
You're exactly right. And this is what worries me. That was the game of the year. To this point, that was the game of the year. That was the biggest game in Nebraska basketball history. Okay, they've never played a top 5 matchup before. So both sides were really excited. And I don't believe the fact that Michigan was looking beyond Nebraska because of tonight. I don't believe that. This was a game that meant a lot. And the fact that Michigan was so lost so many times defensively, it was not an effort thing. I think it was a scheme. I think that it's really hard to switch all pick and rolls against this team. Jamarcus Lawrence is quick. Sanford has the deepest range, and they've got a bunch of guys that just really cut hard. I like mixing in more of the drop coverage. That may not have worked either because this is a really, really good Nebraska team. The fact that they beat Michigan State, well, don't be surprised by that because Michigan State actually played really well in that game. Jamarcus Lawrence made a deep 3 to win it. They beat Illinois. Illinois might be the second best team in the Big Ten right now with their length. Keaton Wagler, if you have not seen him, check this guy out. I mean, he had 46 the other day. He's Purdue.
At Purdue.
Yeah, and he's going to be a lottery pick in the draft. He might be the highest pick out of the Big Ten this year. So there are 5 teams, Sam, that would not surprise me at all to see them in the Final Four, and 2 of them are playing this weekend. I'm so excited for Illinois, Nebraska because I would assume that they're going to get back to 100%, and that will tell us a lot.
Yeah, and Illinois probably has revenge on their mind, but you brought up Keaton Wagler. I talked about this on the show yesterday. Keaton Wagler in that game, true freshman, at Purdue, 46 points, Tim, and it wasn't on 36 shots. The dude was 13 for 17 from the field. I think he was 9 for 11 from 3. I mean, big time performance on the road in a big time matchup. And it got me to looking back at Michigan saying, hey, coming up against Michigan State, Tim, obviously your point guard, he struggled against Nebraska. You can't have that with 8 turnovers. You mentioned Damari going 0 for 5 from 3. Obviously that would, that's not a winning formula, but more than those, he was 3 for 10 in that game. This is a contest against Michigan State where I feel like as we move on to talking about this matchup, this is a game where, you need your big time player to play like up to the level that we've seen him play in other games this season. You need it against this opponent especially.
Sam, throughout our conversations this year, I have made the comment that Yax is an all Big Ten player, and he's an All-American caliber player. I'm not saying that anymore. Okay, I'm not going to say that because he has to show us. That's really high praise, and it comes with a price, and that's that you've got to deliver in the biggest games. I think he's a really good player, really good. He's excellent on defense. He's a great teammate. He rebounds. He has the rundown block shots. Like he does a ton of good stuff. But if he wants to be an All-American, then this is a game everybody's watching. There are 30 NBA teams, Sam. Every single one of them is going to have somebody watching this game, and they're going to write a report on how Yaxel does against this tough defense. And Tom Izzo's team, they are talking about stopping Yax. All day at shoot-around, they talked about it yesterday at practice. That is their priority. So Yaxel is great. I love the guy. I think he's a really good player, but I'm not calling him an All-American or an All-Big Ten player until I see him come out and take charge of this game. And he's totally capable of doing it. And that's a massively important game key for Michigan.
Yeah, no question about it. You mentioned they needed to do a better job of getting their bigs touches in the paint when they were struggling so poorly. I wonder what you think about the bigs matchup in this game. And then, putting Yax in advantageous situations. Are there things you think they can do for him to kind of help him get going?
If Yax is a target, if he's standing and he catches the ball and the defense sees him, that's not his strength. When he's coming off screens, when he's setting a screen and popping to space, when he's making hard cuts, like he's got to be in movement. I also think that it's very important early in the game that he does some other things to really feel good about himself. Make a couple of free throws, get a strong defensive rebound, outlet pass, score in transition. He really is the kind of player that needs to feel like he's impacting the game. And once he does, he's going to score 15 to 20 points. If he's just stagnant and he's a ball mover and he's taking contested threes, that's not his strength. His versatility is what separates him. And so go out and be versatile.
Yeah. And so this is a game where probably going to be the most physical game of the season. That I think every team will say that about Michigan State. The physicality, I think they'll be ready for, because you got a healthier understanding. If you've been to practice, Tim, and they bring out the pads and they're busting guys up, as much as that may have been about the Big Ten in general, I think Michigan State had a lot to do with the sort of the evolution of how Michigan even practices for Big Ten plays. So how do you see that matchup between the bigs and the paint?
Well, first of all, I want to say this before I go on, because I think it's also a really important game key. I'll get to the big guy matchup, but on our Go Blue Hoops podcast, I've asked each of the Michigan current players, which is the game that means the most to you. Every one of them said Michigan State, and they all identified how harsh that crowd is, and so you've got to have a big boy attitude. And I can tell you that one of the hardest things to do is to walk into that environment with that noise and knock down a three-point contested shot. Michigan will not win this game if they rely on perimeter shooting. They've got to go inside. It's their biggest advantage. And with Adai Mara, he's gotten a little bit passive with his post game. He's got to be more demanding, fight for position so he can get 1 foot in the paint. If he plays outside the paint, he's not as effective. And Merez Johnson needs to be the biggest, baddest dude in the whole building. Like he's got that toughness, he's got that will, he's got that attitude, but he has to be the one when there are bodies flying around, he needs to be the one that's staying there with the ball because he has that strength and that mindset. I think Jackson Kohler is one of the most improved players in the country. But if you watch closely, he's slipped like the last 4 or 5 games. His numbers are significantly down. Doesn't mean that he can't be the best player on the court today. And then also Carson Cooper. I never expected him to be a player, and he has come so far. He's the prototypical big man that NBA teams are looking for. Very good lob threat, good defensive helper, runs the court hard, good teammate. So I'm not saying he's an NBA player, but he brings some things that can cause a lot of problems. So I think that Adai Mara needs to be a significant force. And when he posts up, he's got to get his arms out like a 747, Sam. Imagine that wingspan and get a look on your face like, give me the ball and get out of the way. And he can do that. Man, it's a long season. There's a lot of tough games, and I feel like Michigan has had a little bit of slippage, but it's not hard to get that back. And I think, as you said, the post game is going to be mightily important.
Yeah, watching them against Nebraska, you mentioned not getting enough touches. They didn't get it to them often enough. I felt like when they did, very deliberate. It gave time for help to get there in a hurry or get there in time. It just felt like it was a little too deliberate. Like they didn't get into their move or make a decision to pass out of the double team quick enough. That was kind of an observation. So it'll be interesting to see how Michigan State plays those guys. It'll also be interesting to see the point guard matchup. Michigan does a lot of switching, so they won't always be matched up mano a mano. But I'm talking about just the statistical matchup between Elliot Cadeau and Jeremy Fears, who, if you looked at him early in the season, Tim, I watched that Duke game. I was like, ooh, wow, this is not what they expected, I'm sure. But lately, he has played much better. So for Michigan to win this game, I don't think Elliot Cadeau can be outplayed by Jeremy Fears. I'm curious what you think.
Sam, I know you've watched Michigan State play. It wouldn't shock either one of us that Jeremy Fears is the best player on the court. And for him to bounce back from being shot in the leg last year, what a huge success story for him. Yeah, that's a key matchup for sure. And Elliot Cadeau cannot play the way he did against Nebraska. If you told me that Elliot Cadeau would have 8 turnovers, I would have said, man, Nebraska is going to win this game. You can't have your point guard that careless with the ball. And Dusty May was in a tremendous predicament because you saw him. He pulled Elliot out of the game and said, sit down, you're too careless. And he put in LJ Kaysen. LJ Kaysen had 3 turnovers. Your 2 point guards had 11 turnovers in the game. And some of them were just, they're beyond reproach. Think about the fact that, and I had a great angle of this play, there was nothing there. Elliot saw Adai Mara. How can you not see him? He's 7'3", and he threw a high pass. It was kind of like a quarterback throwing to a jump ball to a wide receiver and a cornerback. But the problem is that Adai Mara was running as fast as he can. There's no way he's going to make that catch. And if he did, he's probably going to travel. He's definitely not going to make the list. So that was a bad decision. I do want to say this, though. Play of the game, Elliot Cadeau ran down Jamarcus Lawrence and had a huge steal. That was a game-changing play. And also, I want to shout out Trey McKenney. Absolutely. Because that guy is playing some ball, and he does not look like a freshman. He looks like a 5-star that's really getting comfortable. And right now, maybe this is too much to ask, but the last guy that I'm worried about playing well tonight right now is Trey McKenney. I just think he's going to love that environment. He's won a state championship in that gym. He knows exactly what he's doing. Good for him.
Yeah, he, for as poorly as the backcourt play. Boy, he came in and gave them a huge lift, a couple of big threes. He gets fouled from the 3-point line, steps to the line, and makes all 3 free throws. Jamal Murray couldn't even do that in the NBA. I'm not saying Trey is Jamal Murray, but I'm just talking about how he handled the pressure in that moment. And then the drive and score late in the game, Tim, just a big-time freshman stepping up in a big-time moment. And, this is going to be a big-time game for him because, Tom Izzo really recruited him hard. He spurned the Spartans from being a player from Flint, which I know they think is an abnormal or sacrilegious thing to do. And so they're going to be on him. They're going to be on him when he steps on the floor. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the young fella responds to that.
Yeah, he's very clutch. He's got a great shot. Nebraska fans are still calling for an offensive foul on that play. No way. The referees did a fantastic job in that contest of letting the guys play. And maybe the separator, there's plenty of guys that are freshmen that can make shots. But typically when a freshman comes in the game, you can see the other coach dial up a play immediately to go at the freshman and expose them. Nobody does that against Trey McKenney. He holds his own on the defensive end. He plays like a 10-year NBA veteran with his maturity and playmaking ability.
Yeah. So give me your sort of your scouting report on Michigan State. Strengths, what keys, what you have to attack. Give me the breakdown of the Spartans.
So they're eerily similar to Michigan State teams of the past, where they defend, they rebound, and they run really hard. But Michigan does a lot of those things as well. Both Michigan and Michigan State are the top rebounding teams in the Big Ten. Michigan scores a little bit better. Michigan State defends a little bit better. Surprisingly, Michigan and Michigan State are 2 teams that I don't trust at all from a turnover standpoint. Both of them can be the worst in the Big Ten in that category, or they can be solid. I'm anxious to see. Michigan wants to switch pick and rolls. I think that Michigan State wants more drop coverage. The other thing, Sam, that Michigan State will try to take advantage of is the fact that Michigan's fast break has not been as potent as it was. During the holidays, Michigan was 10-0, and they were winning by an average of 35 points per game because of the fact that their fast break was lethal. Since then, Michigan is 6-1, but they're winning their games by an average of 8 points. So they're really struggling to turn defense into offense. And so I think that Michigan State is really going to try to force feed their transition game, because the truth is, if Michigan gets back on defense, it's going to be hard for Michigan State to score. They've got star power at the 4 and 5. They've got an elite point guard. And then after that, at the 2 and 3, who they need is Jace Richardson, because that guy's in the NBA. But that's the kind of player that they're missing. Their wings, they've got like 5 of them. And they all look okay, and they all have moments, but there's not one of them that I truly think is a star player.
Tim, how concerned are you with Michigan's shooting? I know there were a couple of games, two games before the win over Nebraska, they shot I think like 40% from 3. But in the other so the Nebraska game, and then like the 4 before the last 2, they were shooting in the 20s, low 30s in those games. And so, is this a cold spell, or do you think that this is risen to the level of being somewhat of a concern?
Yeah, I asked Dusty May about that at shoot around, and I said, when you run a set or your actions give you a wide open 3 and guys are just missing them, what do you do? And he said, we've talked about the fact that when your shooting is not working, and you're in a close game, you've got to get a little bit grimy and find other ways to win. And I think that missing shots is definitely part of the game. I would tell Michigan shooters, if you're 0 for 3, don't take a 3-point shot 5 feet behind the line. Get a shot where your toes are on the line. Make sure you keep your balance. Don't start running back on the other end before the ball gets there. Like, really shoot a 3-pointer like a free throw. Like, when somebody shoots a free throw, they stay right there. They hold their follow through. They look at the ball go through the net. That's when I think that you really get fundamentally sound on your threes. Take the best 3-point shot you can get and hold your follow through, and don't leave until the ball goes in. Really commit to your shot. And I think at times some of Michigan's guys, and I'm talking about Yaxel Lendeborg, like really work on your fundamentals. I watched him during practice, and sometimes I think he gets a little bit casual with his threes and his fundamentals.
Yeah. You said something earlier in the show that I think applies, and that is, hey, when they aren't falling, do something different. You know, that could have cost them against Nebraska. If that winds up being the case tonight, it's going to be really important and really interesting to see how they adapt to the fact that shots from distance aren't falling. So big time matchup. Tim, I'd be remiss before we go if I don't ask you about your memories of the matchup, memories of the rivalry with Michigan State. Can you take us back to your experiences against the Spartans?
So I remember my freshman year. I had played in the state semifinals at Jennison Fieldhouse, and so I had played there. I loved the environment. I went to a lot of games there and saw Magic Johnson against Eddie Johnson, and just loved the building, loved the feel of it. My freshman year, I was so excited to play there. And one of the early plays in the game, it was so loud, and I stole the ball at half court and dribbled down and dunked it, and was so proud of myself and so excited. And then all of a sudden the referee said that he had blown a foul, and he gave me a technical foul, the only technical foul of my entire career, because I dunked the ball well after the whistle. And I swear I never heard any whistle. I never heard anything. And so I went from being really proud of myself to the coach yelling at me and everybody booing me. And so it just gets so loud. It's the loudest arena, the loudest crowd, the loudest rival that I've ever been part of. And man, if I could go back in time and play one more game against Michigan State, that would be a thrill to me.
Yeah. Going to be a fantastic matchup. Cannot wait. Jill Gratch asks, is Yaxel's injury still lingering? He seems to be off lately. What do you think about that, Tim?
I don't think he is. I've seen him make too many NBA caliber plays to believe that his bone bruise in his knee is still a problem. I think he's moving fine. And also, he did not play well in his last contest, but he still found a way to get double figures scoring. I think prior to that, in the 5 games, he was averaging about 14 points a game. So that shows you how good he is. He's really good. He's capable of more.
Yeah. Tim, you mentioned the Go Blue Hoops podcast. I want you to plug that, and then give me your take on a question that I asked. I mean, if we assume, I know it's up for debate whether Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten, but assuming that Michigan makes it to the end, that they're the top, who would you see as the biggest threat to them in the Big Ten? So Go Blue Hoops podcast, and who is the biggest threat to Michigan in their run to a Big Ten title?
So the Go Blue Hoops podcast this week had an amazing guest. So you know the Dos Equis commercial where they talk about the most interesting man in the world?
I do.
That's Will Cheddar. And I'd love to have everybody check it out, because this is a fascinating guy. He grew up on a farm. He was the quarterback of the football team, but at halftime, he went and played a French horn in the band. He loves health and nutrition and animals, and like this guy was so refreshing to listen to. And the team that I worry about is Illinois. I think they will be a huge problem for Michigan. If they were playing right now, I would favor Illinois, depending on, is it in Champaign, is it in Ann Arbor? But that's going to be a really tough team for Michigan to beat.
Yeah, they got bigs who can shoot, and you got a guy in Keaton Wagler, who we talked about earlier, who showed he is a prime time player. They got it all, man. I think they're definitely, to me, the biggest threat in the regular season anyway. I always wonder about Brad Underwood in the postseason. But we're talking about who's threat to them for the Big Ten title. Well, I think that's Illinois. So this is just great stuff, Tim. We could talk forever, but folks, hope we gave you an adequate sort of setup and preview of the Michigan State matchup. Be sure to check out Tim's Go Blue Hoops podcast. We'll put the link in the description and in the comment section. Be sure to check it out. Tim, until the next episode, man, it's going to be great. You thought I was going to let you off the hook. Who wins?
I was hoping you would.
Who wins tonight, man? Who wins?
Michigan is down by 1. They run a set play, and Yaxel Lendeborg makes a bucket at the buzzer to win by 1.
Okay. I'll take it. I'll take it on the road at the Breslin Center. We got to get out of here, folks. Thanks for watching and listening to another edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider. And